free access to their emotions simply by speaking. They wake up thinking about what someone said yesterday instead of focusing on what they must build today. This is the hidden cost of refusing to ignore people. Every unnecessary reaction steals time, peace, and mental strength that can never be recovered. Powerful people understand something that most never learn. Not every person deserves a place inside your mind. Just because someone has an opinion does not mean it deserves your attention. Just because someone wants your reaction does not mean they have earned it. The moment you respond to every distraction, you stop directing your own life and begin living according to other people's emotions. This is why ignoring people is one of the most ruthless forms of power. It denies others the influence they desperately seek over your thoughts and decisions. Human psychology explains why this is so effective. Many people do not seek your attention because they value you. They seek it because attention gives them significance. Every argument keeps them relevant. Every emotional response confirms that they have entered your mind. Every attempt to defend yourself proves they succeeded in disturbing your peace. They may not change your opinion, but if they can change your emotional state, they have already gained something valuable. Powerful people recognize this psychological trap. Instead of rewarding negativity with attention, they quietly remove their focus. The moment your reaction disappears, many people lose the only power they ever had over you. This is why emotionally disciplined people become extremely selective about who they acknowledge. They understand that ignoring people is not an act of pride. It is an act of protection. They ignore gossip because gossip steals focus. They ignore unnecessary criticism because not every opinion improves their life. They ignore people who constantly complain because negativity spreads faster than optimism. They ignore those who thrive on drama because drama survives only when someone continues feeding it. Their silence is not accidental, it is intentional. Every person they ignore is one less distraction standing between them and their purpose. Many people misunderstand this lesson. They assume ignoring people means treating everyone with disrespect or refusing all communication. That is not the art being discussed. Powerful people know the difference between ignoring distractions and ignoring responsibilities. They listen carefully to wise advice. They respect honest criticism from people who genuinely want their growth. They communicate openly with those who have earned trust, but they refuse to waste emotional energy on individuals whose only contribution is conflict. They understand that wisdom is not knowing how to answer everyone. Wisdom is knowing who no longer deserves an answer. There is another reason ignoring people becomes ruthless power. Every time you refuse to react, you strengthen your own emotional discipline. At first, ignoring negativity feels difficult. Your ego wants to respond. Your pride wants to prove itself. Your emotions demand immediate satisfaction. But every time you resist that impulse, your self-control grows stronger. Eventually, people discover that provoking you no longer works. Insults lose their effect. Gossip loses its influence. Attempts to distract you become useless because your attention remains fixed on something far more important than temporary conflict. Notice how successful people protect their attention. They rarely waste hours defending themselves online. They do not spend every day responding to critics who contribute nothing to their mission. They understand that every unnecessary conversation delays meaningful progress. While others are trapped inside endless arguments, they continue building businesses, developing skills, strengthening relationships, and pursuing goals. Their greatest advantage is not superior intelligence alone. It is their refusal to allow unimportant people to interrupt important work. The art of ignoring people also changes the way others see you. Someone who reacts to everything appears emotionally available to everyone. Anyone can disturb their peace with a few words. But someone who chooses their responses carefully appears emotionally stable and difficult to manipulate. People begin realizing that attention from such a person must be earned rather than demanded. This quiet discipline creates influence because it communicates that your emotions are guided by your principles instead of other people's behavior. In the end, the most ruthless power is not humiliating people, defeating them in arguments, or proving them wrong. The most ruthless power is quietly removing them from your attention altogether. Once someone no longer occupies your thoughts, they lose the ability to steal your peace, your focus, or your direction. Ignoring people is not weakness. It is the decision to protect your greatest asset from those who have done nothing to deserve it. And once you master the art of ignoring the people who only seek your attention, you begin to understand that your attention itself is your greatest currency, and every moment you spend on the wrong people is a moment stolen from the life you were meant to build. Once you understand that ignoring people protects your peace, you discover an even deeper truth. Your attention is the most valuable currency you possess. Most people believe money is their greatest asset, but money can be earned again. Time can never be recovered, and attention determines where your time, energy, and emotions are invested. Every person who succeeds in capturing your attention gains influence over your thoughts. This is why the art of ignoring people is not simply about remaining silent. It is about becoming extremely selective with the currency of your attention. The most ruthless power belongs to those who refuse to spend that currency on people who have not earned it. Think about how easily attention is stolen. A negative comment can distract someone for an entire day. A rumor can dominate conversations for weeks. A person who enjoys creating conflict needs only a few words to pull others into emotional chaos. Before long, people stop focusing on their own goals and begin living inside someone else's drama. They replay conversations, imagine arguments, and prepare responses that may never even be spoken. The person creating the distraction has already won, because they have redirected valuable attention away from meaningful progress. Powerful people recognize this psychological trap immediately. Instead of chasing every distraction, they quietly ignore it and return their focus to what actually improves their life. Human psychology reveals that attention works like a reward. Whatever receives your attention grows stronger in your mind. When you constantly respond to negative people, you encourage them to continue seeking your reaction. When you repeatedly argue with someone who thrives on conflict, you teach them that provoking you is effective. Every emotional response becomes proof that they have succeeded in entering your thoughts. This is why powerful people understand a simple principle: never reward behavior that deserves to disappear. Sometimes the strongest response is giving no response at all. Many people struggle with this because they confuse silence with weakness. They believe ignoring someone means surrendering the argument or accepting disrespect. But true power is measured differently. If someone can force you into an emotional reaction whenever they choose, who actually controls the situation? The person speaking or the person reacting? Powerful individuals understand that emotional control is worth more than winning temporary debates. They refuse to exchange inner peace for the satisfaction of having the last word. Their silence is not fear. It is discipline. Look closely at the people who constantly seek attention. They often become uncomfortable when ignored because attention is the fuel that keeps their influence alive. Whether the attention is positive or negative does not always matter. As long as people continue reacting, they remain important. This is why ignoring people can become the most ruthless form of power. It quietly removes the reward they were hoping to receive. Without your attention, their ability to influence your emotions begins to disappear. They may continue speaking, criticizing, or provoking, but their efforts lose psychological strength because you refuse to participate. Powerful people also understand that attention should be invested where it creates growth rather than conflict. Instead of wasting emotional energy on people who constantly complain, they focus on people who inspire progress. Instead of arguing with individuals committed to misunderstanding them, they spend time learning new skills, improving their health, strengthening meaningful relationships, and building a future that reflects their values. Every moment spent on purpose is a moment not wasted on unnecessary drama. This is the real advantage of ignoring people. It creates space for a better life. Another psychological truth is that people often reveal their intentions through the way they compete for your attention. Some individuals encourage your growth. Others constantly distract you from it. Some conversations leave you inspired, while others leave you emotionally exhausted. Powerful men and women notice this difference. They stop giving equal attention to everyone simply because everyone demands it. They understand that access to their time and emotional energy is a privilege, not an obligation. Ignoring people who repeatedly drain that energy becomes an act of wisdom rather than cruelty. This does not mean becoming arrogant or believing you are above others. It means recognizing that your attention has limits. Every hour spent arguing with someone determined to remain negative is an hour that cannot be invested in your purpose. Every emotional battle you choose unnecessarily delays the progress you could have made elsewhere. Powerful people protect this resource with remarkable discipline. They ask themselves a simple question before responding: will giving this person my attention improve my life or distract me from what truly matters? That single question prevents countless unnecessary conflicts. Over time, this habit transforms your character. You stop feeling obligated to answer every criticism. You no longer feel the need to defend yourself against every false opinion. You become comfortable allowing your actions to speak louder than endless explanations. Instead of chasing approval, you invest your attention where it produces growth, peace, and meaningful achievement. This quiet discipline creates a kind of confidence that cannot be manufactured through words alone. It is built through thousands of decisions to protect your focus from people who never deserved it. The art of ignoring people is ultimately the art of controlling where your attention goes. Once you realize that attention is your greatest currency, you stop spending it carelessly. You become selective, intentional, and disciplined. And in doing so, you discover that the most ruthless power is not making people notice you. It is refusing to let the wrong people occupy your mind. And once you master the discipline of protecting your attention, you begin to realize that silence itself becomes a source of influence, because those who never feel compelled to explain themselves are often the ones who command the greatest respect. Once you stop wasting your attention on people who do not deserve it, another form of power begins to emerge. It is quieter, more subtle, and far more effective than any argument you could ever win. That power is silence. Most people believe influence comes from speaking more, explaining themselves more, or defending every decision they make. They think that if they can simply find the perfect words, they can change every opinion and silence every critic. But human psychology rarely works that way. The more you feel compelled to explain yourself to everyone, the more you reveal that you need their approval. The art of ignoring people teaches a completely different lesson. Sometimes the most ruthless power is allowing silence to say everything that words never could. Look carefully at how emotionally reactive people behave. The moment someone questions them, they immediately begin defending themselves. The moment a rumor appears, they rush to correct every detail. The moment they are criticized, they feel an irresistible need to prove the other person wrong. Without realizing it, they have accepted an invisible trap. They have allowed someone else to decide where their attention goes. Instead of focusing on their own mission, they become occupied with managing other people's opinions. Their life slowly turns into an endless cycle of explanations, justifications, and emotional reactions. Powerful people understand that not every opinion deserves an answer. They know that some individuals are not searching for the truth. They are searching for a reaction. No explanation will satisfy someone who has already chosen to misunderstand you. No carefully prepared argument will convince a person who values conflict more than clarity. Continuing to respond only gives those people exactly what they wanted: your time, your energy, and your emotional investment. This is why ignoring people through silence becomes such a ruthless form of power. It denies them the reaction they hope to control. Human psychology is deeply influenced by uncertainty. When people receive constant explanations, there is little left to think about. Everything has already been presented to them. But when someone remains calm and refuses to react unnecessarily, the psychological dynamic changes. Silence creates space. It forces people to rely on their own assumptions instead of controlling yours. More importantly, it demonstrates that your emotional stability is not dependent on convincing everyone to agree with you. That quiet confidence often leaves a stronger impression than 1,000 carefully chosen words. This does not mean silence should replace honesty. Powerful people know when communication is necessary and when it is pointless. If someone they respect asks a sincere question, they answer with openness and clarity. If a misunderstanding can genuinely be resolved through conversation, they do not hide behind silence. But they also recognize the difference between meaningful dialogue and emotional distraction. When a conversation exists only to provoke, insult, or waste time, silence becomes the wiser choice. Ignoring those people is not avoidance, it is disciplined judgment. Many people fear silence because they believe it makes them appear weak. They imagine others will assume they have no answer. But emotionally mature individuals understand that strength is not measured by how quickly you respond. It is measured by whether you can remain calm when others expect you to lose control. Anyone can react in anger, anyone can defend their ego. Very few people possess the discipline to ignore unnecessary conflict and continue moving toward their purpose without interruption. That ability separates emotionally powerful individuals from emotionally reactive ones. There is another reason silence carries psychological influence. People naturally become curious about those who do not constantly seek attention. Someone who speaks without purpose often becomes predictable, but someone who chooses words carefully creates an entirely different presence. Their silence communicates confidence because it suggests they are secure enough not to prove themselves every moment. This is why many influential people throughout history have understood the value of restraint. They did not waste their voice on every disagreement. They preserved it for moments that truly mattered. The art of ignoring people also means ignoring the temptation to defend your reputation against every accusation. Reputation built on endless explanations becomes fragile because it depends on constant maintenance. Character built on consistent actions becomes resilient because actions continue speaking long after arguments have ended. Powerful people trust that time reveals truth more effectively than emotional debates. Instead of chasing every rumor, they keep producing results. Instead of arguing with critics, they continue building their future. Their silence protects their focus, and their actions become their strongest response. Over time, this habit transforms the way others see you. People begin to notice that you cannot be easily drawn into unnecessary conflict. They realize that emotional manipulation no longer works because you refuse to reward it with attention. Your calmness creates influence not because it is mysterious, but because it reflects genuine self-control. You become someone who responds by choice instead of by impulse. That quiet discipline earns respect in ways loud reactions rarely do. The art of ignoring people is not about disappearing from the world or refusing every conversation. It is about refusing to surrender your peace to individuals who contribute nothing to your growth. Silence becomes your filter. It separates conversations that deserve your energy from distractions that deserve none. And once you understand this principle, you realize that every unnecessary explanation weakens your focus, while every moment of disciplined silence strengthens your influence. And once you learn to let silence protect your attention instead of wasting your energy on endless explanations, you become ready to discover the deeper power of emotional detachment, the ability to remain completely calm no matter how others choose to behave. Once you master the ability to ignore people who constantly demand your attention, you unlock a level of power that very few ever reach. It is the power of emotional detachment. Most people misunderstand this phrase. They assume this emotional detachment means becoming cold, careless, or incapable of feeling. But true emotional detachment has nothing to do with a lack of emotion. It is the ability to feel everything without allowing everything to control you. This is the real art of ignoring people. It is not about pretending they do not exist. It is about refusing to let their opinions, moods, insults, or behavior determine your emotional state. That is the most ruthless power because once people realize they can no longer control your emotions, they lose one of their greatest weapons against you. Look at how most people live. Their mood changes depending on who praises them and who criticizes them. One compliment makes them confident, while one insult destroys their peace. They become happy when others approve of them and anxious when someone rejects them. Their emotional state is controlled by external events instead of internal discipline. This is why they struggle to ignore people. Every opinion feels important because their identity depends on other people's sextents. They become prisoners of public opinion without ever noticing the chains. Powerful people understand that emotional dependence is one of the greatest weaknesses a person can develop. The moment your happiness depends on everyone's approval, you become easy to manipulate. People quickly discover what triggers you. They know which words make you angry, which criticisms make you defensive, and which situations force you to react. They no longer need physical power or authority over you because your emotions have already become predictable. The art of ignoring people begins by breaking this pattern. You stop allowing strangers, critics, toxic friends, jealous coworkers, or attention seekers to decide how you feel. Human psychology reveals a simple truth. The people who constantly seek emotional reactions often lose interest when they receive none. Think about individuals who thrive on gossip, conflict, or unnecessary arguments. Their influence depends entirely on participation. They need someone to become offended. They need someone to defend themselves. They need someone to argue back. Without emotional participation, their influence slowly disappears. This is why emotional detachment becomes such ruthless power. You remove yourself from the emotional battlefield completely. Instead of fighting every battle, you quietly refuse to enter battles that were designed only to distract you. Many people mistake this for weakness because society often celebrates loud reactions. We admire dramatic confrontations, clever comebacks, and public victories. But those moments rarely create lasting power. They usually create temporary satisfaction followed by unnecessary stress. Powerful people ask a different question. They ask whether the battle deserves their energy at all. If the answer is no, they ignore the person completely. They understand that protecting their emotional balance is more valuable than proving they are right. Ignoring people also requires separating your identity from their opinions. One of the biggest psychological traps is believing that someone else's judgment defines your value. A person may criticize your work, your appearance, your ambition, or your decisions, but their opinion remains exactly that, an opinion. It is not your identity. Powerful individuals understand this distinction. They listen when criticism is constructive because growth requires humility. But they ignore criticism whose only purpose is to discourage, distract, or provoke. They refuse to give emotional authority to people who have done nothing to earn it. Another important lesson is that emotional detachment protects your long-term vision. Every great achievement requires sustained focus. Yet many people never reach their potential because they become emotionally trapped in small conflicts with small-minded individuals. They spend weeks trying to correct false rumors, convince critics, or gain approval from people who never intended to support them. While they fight meaningless battles, their dreams quietly wait. Powerful people refuse to make this mistake. They ignore distractions because they understand that every minute spent feeding negativity is a minute stolen from building something meaningful. Notice how emotionally detached people respond when someone insults them publicly. They do not immediately rush to defend their ego. They first ask themselves whether the situation deserves a response. Often they realize the insult says more about the other person's character than their own. Instead of reacting emotionally, they continue with their work. This calmness frustrates people who expected anger because emotional manipulators survive on reactions. When those reactions disappear, so does much of their influence. This does not mean accepting genuine injustice or remaining silent when your principles require action. Emotional detachment is not passive surrender. It is disciplined decision-making. Powerful people speak when their values demand it, but they refuse to speak simply because someone wants a reaction. They choose their moments carefully. Their emotions serve their purpose instead of controlling it. This ability to remain calm under pressure becomes one of the strongest forms of influence because it cannot easily be shaken by outside forces. Over time, emotional detachment transforms your entire life. You stop comparing yourself with people who contribute nothing to your future. You stop chasing validation from those who never intended to appreciate you. You stop carrying emotional burdens that belong to other people. Most importantly, you stop allowing distractions to interrupt your purpose. Ignoring people becomes effortless because your focus becomes more valuable than their opinions. Your peace becomes stronger than their negativity. Your discipline becomes greater than their attempts to provoke you. The art of ignoring people reaches its highest level when your emotional stability no longer depends on anyone else's behavior. At that point, criticism loses its power, gossip loses its attraction, and unnecessary conflict loses its purpose. You become difficult to manipulate because your emotions are guided by your principles instead of other people's actions. That is why emotional detachment is not an escape from the world. It is the most ruthless form of inner strength. And once you stop allowing people to control your emotions, you become ready to make an even more powerful decision to permanently ignore those who repeatedly drain your energy and quietly protect your peace without looking back. Once you become emotionally detached from unnecessary opinions and distractions, you begin to recognize something that most people never notice. Not everyone deserves continued access to your life. One of the greatest mistakes people make is believing they must keep explaining themselves, forgiving endless disrespect, or remaining available to everyone simply to appear kind. But the art of ignoring people teaches a different lesson. Kindness without boundaries eventually becomes weakness. If someone repeatedly drains your energy, destroys your peace, or distracts you from your purpose, the most ruthless power is not arguing with them. It is quietly removing them from your attention. Sometimes the strongest response is no response at all. Look at the people who constantly create drama wherever they go. They move from one conflict to another, carrying negativity into every conversation. They complain without seeking solutions. They criticize without creating anything meaningful. They spread gossip because it gives them temporary importance. They provoke arguments because conflict keeps them at the center of attention. If you continue giving these people your time, they slowly begin shaping your emotional world. You may not even realize it at first. Their negativity becomes your daily conversation. Their problems become your emotional burden. Their distractions become obstacles standing between you and your goals. This is exactly why powerful people master the art of ignoring people before those distractions become permanent habits. Human psychology explains why toxic individuals often continue the same behavior for years. They survive on attention. Whether people argue with them, defend themselves, or become offended, the result is the same. They receive emotional investment. Every reaction tells them they still have influence. The moment that attention disappears, their ability to control the situation begins to fade. This is why ignoring people can become the most ruthless form of power. You are not punishing them. You are simply refusing to reward behavior that repeatedly steals your peace. Many people stay trapped in unhealthy relationships, friendships, or social circles because they confuse loyalty with unlimited tolerance. They believe walking away makes them selfish. They think protecting their peace means abandoning others. But powerful people understand an important distinction. Helping someone who genuinely wants to grow is very different from sacrificing yourself for someone who repeatedly refuses to change. If every conversation leaves you emotionally exhausted, if every interaction is filled with manipulation, criticism, jealousy, or unnecessary conflict, continuing to participate is no longer kindness. It is self-neglect. Ignoring people who constantly drain your energy is not an emotional reaction. It is a strategic decision. Instead of trying to change them, you change your access. You stop joining meaningless arguments. You stop responding to every message designed to provoke you. You stop attending conversations where gossip replaces growth. Little by little, you remove your attention from places where your energy is wasted. This quiet discipline creates room for something far more valuable. It creates space for peace, purpose, and meaningful relationships. Powerful people also understand that every yes to unnecessary people becomes a no to something more important. Every hour spent defending yourself against negativity is an hour not invested in learning, creating, improving, or resting. Every emotional battle delays progress that could have transformed your future. This is why successful individuals protect their time with remarkable discipline. They do not ignore people because they believe they are superior. They ignore people because they understand that attention is limited, and they refuse to spend it carelessly. There is another psychological truth hidden inside this principle. People who constantly seek drama often become frustrated when they realize they no longer have access